An aspect of whisky that has increased greatly in interest in recent years is collecting. Now, some may say, but whisky is made to be drunk, not to be put on a shelf, which is true. And many collectors also, well, ideally buy 2 bottles and drink one and put one in their collection. But, I mean, let's face it, it's surely a more sensible thing to collect than, say, thimbles, although thimbles take up less space. What do collectors look for? First of all, they collect malt whisky. Malt whiskies generally are more valuable than blended whiskies. This is a Macallan 1874. Actually, it's a facsimile. It's not the original bottle from 1874, but this is a copy, both in terms of the style of the bottle and in terms of the liquid it contains. The original would be worth several thousands of pounds, but I'm happy to say that this one, which I was given as a present, is now worth substantially more than the price paid for it. So age, this one here, which is rather an ugly looking bottle, is a blended whisky from the 1950s. So that would probably be worth £150, maybe £200. Unfortunately, the level in the bottle is quite low, which would decrease its value, but it's an uncommon whisky. So old whiskies generally are worth more. Limited edition whiskies are sought after. This one here, another rather dull label, but this is a Caol Ila, 8-year-old Caol Ila, which was bottled specially for Bell's about 10 years ago. But only 40 bottles were made, signed by Mike Nicholson, or beg your pardon, Gordon Bell, who was the master blender at that time for Bell's. Likewise, this Cooley whiskey, limited. This one is bottle number 162, and it's signed by Dr. John Teeling, the chairman of Cooley Distillery. So this was a whiskey that was made specially for me. You can see my picture on the label in the pink, always in the pink it says, which is not strictly true. A pretty label. Collectors like pretty labels, particularly if it's combined with old bottles of whiskey. They collect limited editions. I have here, again, rather a dull looking label, but there was only 40 bottles of this made, and so they are highly collectible. This is an 8-year-old Caol Ila, which was bottled to celebrate Bell's in, as I say, about 10 years ago, I should think. And the final one I've put out here is a single cask bottling called the Old Fox. And this was done for distribution to members of Clan Fraser by Simon Lord Lovat. Also rare and therefore collectible. But I'm not an expert. I don't collect whiskey myself. I drink whiskey. But let me introduce you now to someone who is a collector and who knows an awful lot more about the subject than I. I'm with John Rose, whiskey collector, contributor to Whiskey Magazine. He has his own column on Whiskey Magazine about collecting whiskey, and former employee at Royal Lochnagar Distillery. John, how did you start collecting?
Well, Charlie, when I was, I've been in the whiskey business all my life, basically, and we used to get bottles, special bottlings at Christmas called the Manager's Dram.
Oh, yes.
I collected them just by chance, really, but then I started looking into researching different distilleries, and that's basically how I started the whole collecting business.
We were talking just before about focus. What do you mean by that? Focusing on a particular collection, making a collection rather than just a random collection?
Well, you have really to think about where you're going in the whiskey business. I get asked this every day, basically. How do we start? You really got to think about what you're doing, but it's fairly simple. You can collect from one distillery. You could collect from distilleries that are closed. You can collect pretty labels, if you like that sort of thing. You can do numbers. Some folk buy ones that have only 400 bottles or under being produced, but you need to go down one of the avenues because you can get saturated with the numbers of bottles that are there. And I often say to people, it's a huge difference between having a collection of whiskey and a whiskey collection.
Yeah, and I suppose you can choose the level at which you enter or want to collect,
Yep.
the amount of money you want to spend.
This, I'll show you here, this one there is a Glendevon. Now, very simple bottle, not expensive when it came out, but it was specially bottled for the charter 200th anniversary of Macduff, the village.
Which is where Glendevon Distillery
Yes,
is.
and that was in 1983. So now there's a bottle worth buy-in about £15, maybe less. Now £100 plus probably.
Yes.
So you don't. It doesn't really. You don't have to go into thousands of pounds, but you can do if you want.
Yes, yes.
There's another one here I've got from. There's this one, this Johnston's of Elgin. Now
It's difficult to see that label. It's engraved on the bottle.
Now that was taken out for 200th anniversary of the Cashmere shop in Elgin, bottled and made by Glenfarclas, sorry. And again, that was a bottle, £10, £15. Again, 10 years after, talking about £100.
Yes.
So
yes.
you have to think. You have a wee look at them and think what you really see on the label. It must be on the label. No use somebody saying to you, "Oh, this was bottled by so and so." If it's not in the label, we can't say that.
Yes.
But another way of doing it is bottles which are pleasing to the eye, super to touch. This is the Old Balvenie. Now that's another bottle, £15. Again, we're talking about being quite expensive now, but simply because I like it, and I know as new collectors come up, but they're going to like it. And this is another wee part of it. There we have a wee bottle there.
Yes, I've never seen that one before.
Now that was given to the pubs, the buyers of the Balvenie. If they bought maybe a case of 6, they got one of that free just to have a taste. So we've now got the 3. We've got the
Medium size and the baby one.
Yeah, the miniature, that one, and the big one.
Would you ever drink these?
I don't know. I wouldn't. Simply because I don't drink. I used to drink, but I stopped quite a few years ago.
But I discern two kinds of collector, what I would call a consumer collector. So people who will buy old whiskies, rare whiskies, and drink them with their friends. And what I would call museum collectors who put them in a cupboard and admire them on the wall. Where do you fall? You're obviously not a consumer collector, but do you display your collection?
No, I don't. No, but what I do is I love finding whiskies. I love having them for a while. But if I need the money for something, and a collector wants to buy it, then I've no hesitation in selling it.
Yes.
In fact, just a couple of years ago, my daughter got married. And we had the usual wedding expenses, but I wanted to do something just a wee bit better. So I sold 1 or 2 bottles to a London collector, and I hired the local pipe band from Ballater, which was a great success, and we had a big firework display immediately after. So that was my wee contribution to the wedding above the normal, and that was from the whisky collecting side.
They must have been very valuable bottles.
Well, there were 1 or 2 nice ones.
Where do you buy, and how do you go about buying old whiskey?
Well, it's I basically often buy from individual people in the whisky area, someone in the whisky area anyway. So I've got a chance to do it. But I mean, normally you would have to buy probably at auction for the older bottles. But like you can see, there's lots of bottles you can still buy over the counter. And with a wee bit of just thought, and it doesn't really matter if they don't become valuable, you can still drink them.
How many whisky auctions are there? No.
There's approximately 10 in Scotland most years now.
Gosh.
Between now and Christmas, with 5 coming off. But it's quite a business, and that's solely involved in whisky selling.
Gosh, that's astonishing.
So there's quite a lot of interest in it.
And how many collectors? Is there a growing number of collectors?
Yeah. Every time you go to an auction, you see new faces. Lots of people from the sort of Russian part of the world, but you can see them coming in from anywhere, new faces all the time, always somebody looking to take up the hobby.
And presumably that enhances the price, so it will increase the investment worth of of the whiskey.
Most of them, if you really look at it, most of them do appreciate. But at the same time, you've got to be prepared that you might buy, and we all do.
Yeah.
We all buy things at the wrong price for some reason or other. Or if you drop it, it's a disaster. But on the whole, it's pretty, I would say pretty good hobby.